The sun is already dying. It is Monday, December 23rd, 2019, 2 days before Christmas. We are in the Scottish Highlands on the south side of the River Beauly. Here, in the deep winter, the daylight is not a gift. It is a fleeting window. The sun rises late, and by 3:30 p.m., the shadows are already long enough to swallow a man whole. It is 4:30 inches the afternoon. Twilight has turned into true darkness. On a lonely track near Upper Fenelon, a silver SUV sits abandoned. It is a Dacia Duster. The engine is cold, but the car is not empty. Inside, sitting in the driver's seat or perhaps the passenger side, is a dog. A spaniel-collie cross. He is alert. He is waiting. He is waiting for his master, James Paton. But James Paton is nowhere. Here is the glitch. Here is the detail that keeps investigators awake at night. When the car is found, the dog is safe inside. But according to local reports, the window is open. And on the outside of the door, not the inside, but the outside, there are muddy streaks. Drag marks. Paw prints scrambling up. It looks like the dog didn't wait for James to put him back in the car. It looks like the dog came back alone and put himself inside to escape something in the woods. James Paton was 72 years old. He was strong. He was capable. He was parked 3 miles from his home. He had a newspaper on the seat next to him that he planned to read that evening. He stepped into the woods at 1:30 p.m. By 4:30 p.m., he had evaporated. No scream, no body, no trace. Just a loyal dog, a muddy car door, and a mystery that contradicts the laws of physics. How does a man vanish from a familiar path in the time it takes to watch a movie? Welcome to Ruttle Woods. And welcome to the nightmare before Christmas. To understand the horror of the disappearance, we have to understand the normalcy of the day. True crime isn't about monsters hiding in closets. It's about how fragile our routine actually is. James Paton is not an adventurer seeking a thrill. He is a creature of habit. A retired grandfather, a man who loves his routine. Let's rewind the clock. 1 p.m. James pulls into a filling station in the town of Beauly. Look at him. He is calm. He buys a newspaper. This is what criminal psychologists call future-oriented behavior. A man who is planning to end his life does not buy the daily news to read later. A man in a state of confusion does not count out change for a paper. He is grounded, he is present. He is dressed for a short walk, but perhaps not for a long survival situation. He wears a purple jumper, a green fleece jacket, blue work, trousers or jeans, and on his feet, rigger boots. Keep that detail in your mind. Rigger boots are slip-ons. They are tough, yes, used for construction, but they are loose around the ankle. They don't lace up tight like hiking boots. In heavy mud, a rigger boot can be sucked right off your foot. On slippery rocks, they offer very little ankle support. 1:30 p.m. James is seen driving his silver Dacia towards Fenelon Farm Road. This is the last time any human being sees James Paton alive. He is heading for Ruttle Woods. He knows this place. He walks here often. And that is the danger. Complacency. When we are in new territory, our brains are alert. We watch our step. When we are on a path we have walked 100 times, we go on autopilot. We stop looking at the ground. 1:45 p.m. We estimate he parks the car on the track near Upper Fenelon. He opens the door. The spaniel-collie jumps out, tail wagging. The air is crisp, about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe colder. James locks the car. Or maybe he doesn't. Maybe he leaves the window cracked for air, thinking he will only be gone 20 minutes. Just a quick loop. Just enough time to let the dog run. But look at the sky. The sun is dropping. The golden hour in Scotland isn't golden, it's gray. And it is short. He has entered the woods with less than 2 hours of usable light remaining. He walks into the trees. The clock is ticking. Tick. Tock. He doesn't know it, but he has just crossed an invisible line. The event horizon. There is no coming back. If you look at Ruttle Woods on a map, it looks manageable. A patch of green next to a blue line. But a map is a lie. This is not a manicured city park. There are no paved walkways here, no benches. This is a working forest. And it is aggressive. Locals call the terrain here forest trashing. That's a specific term. It means you don't walk through the woods, you fight them. The ground is a minefield of what survival experts call negative obstacles. A negative obstacle is a hole you can't see until you're already falling into it. Deep drainage ditches covered by overgrown ferns. Rotting tree trunks that look solid but turn to powder when you step on them. Now, imagine James Paton. He is 72. He is wearing those rigger boots, loose at the heel. He is walking on uneven, slick ground. And then, the light betrays him. As 2 p.m. turns to 3 p.m., the gloaming sets in. In the Scottish winter, twilight flattens everything. Shadows disappear. Depth perception fails. A 3-foot drop looks like flat ground. A slippery route looks like a dry path. But the woods are only half the danger. Because running alongside this green maze is the monster. The River Beauly. It is wide, it is fast. And in December, it is swollen with rain and snowmelt. The water temperature is barely above freezing. If you slip on the muddy bank, if those rigger boots lose traction for just 1 second, you are in the water. And the cold water shock response is instant. You gasp, you inhale water, and the current takes you. This is the stage. A dense, blinding forest on one side. A freezing, rushing river on the other. And James Paton is walking the tightrope between them. 4:30 p.m. The alarm is raised. This is unusually fast for a missing persons case. Usually people wait. They think, oh, he's just running late. But someone knew James's routine was sacred. When he wasn't back by dark, they knew something was wrong. The police arrive at the track near Upper Fenelon. They find the Dacia Duster. And this is where the investigation hits a brick wall. The dog is inside, alive, unharmed. But the car tells a confusing story. Police officially state the dog was traced inside. But the community, the locals who were there, the people searching the ground before the police tape went up, they tell a different story. A darker story. They say the window was open. Not smashed, open. And on the door panel, mud. Think about the physics of that mud. If a dog jumps out of a car, they scratch the inside plastic or the seat. But mud on the outside, drag marks going up? That implies the dog was outside, in the mud, and scrambled back in. This changes everything. It suggests James didn't put the dog back. It suggests the dog came back alone. The cavalry arrives. The Dundonell Mountain Rescue Team. The Coast Guard helicopter with FLIR thermal imaging. The Police Scotland Dive and Marine Unit. They have the technology to find a needle in a haystack. But Ruttle Woods is not a haystack. It is a blanket. The tree canopy is so thick, so dense with pine and debris, that it blocks the thermal heat signatures. A body lying under a fallen tree might not show up on the helicopter's screen. And if James is in the river, the sonar struggles against the rocks and the underwater timber. Hours turn into days. Divers go into the freezing black water. Searchers poke poles into the deep bracken. They check the sheds. They check the barns. They find nothing. Not a glove. Not a hat. Not a single rigger boot. It is as if James Paton simply stepped off the edge of the earth. But the dog knows. The dog came back. Why didn't James? In every disappearance, it is not what is found that haunts us. It is what is missing. James Paton didn't just leave his car, he left behind his ability to see. Reports state James wore glasses. Now, consider the mechanics of a fall. If you trip in the woods, if your boot catches a root, and you go down hard, what happens? Your hands go out, your head snaps forward, glasses fly off. If James fell and lost his glasses in the bracken, the world instantly became a blur. At 3 p.m., in a dark forest, without corrective lenses, a 72-year-old man is functionally blind. He can't see the path. He can't see the riverbank. Panic sets in. Disorientation turns a small accident into a fatal spiral. But there is another piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit. The silence. When someone is lost in the woods, they usually leave a trail. A scuff mark, a broken branch, a piece of fabric torn on a thorn. Search and rescue teams are trackers. They read the ground like a book. But Ruttle Woods gave them blank pages. No scent trail for the cadaver dogs to follow decisively from the car. No sign on the ground. It is as if James didn't walk away. It is as if he was lifted up. And then we come back to the dog. The spaniel-collie, a breed known for intelligence and loyalty. If James had simply fallen and broken a leg, a dog like that often stays. They guard, they bark, they become a beacon for rescuers. But this dog didn't stay. It abandoned its master and retreated to the car. Why? Dogs flee when they are frightened, or they return to base when they realize the person they are with is no longer there. Did the dog witness James enter the water? Or did the dog witness James fall into a place where he could not be followed? So, where is James Paton? After years of silence, we are left with three main theories. We call this the theory triangle. Let's dismantle them, one by one. The first theory is the most brutal, the terrain trap. Ruttle Woods is full of what locals call windblow trees torn up by storms. When these trees fall, they create cavities underneath. Over years, heather and bracken grow over them, creating a false floor. James is walking. His rigger boot slips. He falls, not just onto the ground, but into it. He slides into a hollow beneath a root system or a deep drainage ditch obscured by vegetation. If he is unconscious, or if the fall triggers a stroke or heart attack, he makes no sound. The vegetation snaps back into place over him. He is invisible from the air, invisible from 5 feet away. He is effectively buried by the landscape itself. This theory explains why the dog left. The dog couldn't get to him. And it explains why the searchers missed him. You can't find what you walk right over. The second theory, and the one favored by many investigators, is the river. James goes to the water's edge. Maybe to wash the mud off his boots before getting back in the car. Maybe the dog ran to the water to drink, and James followed. The bank collapses, or he slips. He hits the water. December water is a shock to the system that stops your heart. The gasp reflex makes you inhale a lungful of water instantly. You don't scream. You don't wave your arms. You just sink. The river Beauly is powerful. It has deep currents and strainers, submerged trees that act like nets. If the river took him, it could have swept him miles downstream in minutes. Or it could have pinned him deep underwater, beneath a log jam where sonar cannot see. If the river took him, he may never be found. But there is a flaw in both these theories. If he fell in the woods, the scent dogs should have found him. If he fell in the river, the body usually surfaces eventually. Neither happened. Which leads us to the third point of the triangle. We have looked at the ground. We have looked at the water. But there is a third landscape we must navigate. The internal landscape. The human brain. James was 72. At that age, the body can be a ticking clock. Vascular events like a mini-stroke or a sudden drop in blood pressure can happen without warning. They don't always kill you instantly. Sometimes they just delete the map. Medical experts call it delirium or confusion. Imagine this. James gets out of the car. He feels dizzy. His reality shifts. He forgets he is walking the dog. He forgets where the car is. He just knows he needs to keep moving. He doesn't walk toward the path. He walks away from it. He walks into the deep brush, driven by a misfiring neuron. There is a phenomenon known as terminal burrowing. When people are hypothermic or confused, they have a primal instinct to hide, to squeeze into small, enclosed spaces to conserve heat. Under a rock overhang, inside a hollow log. If James did this, he didn't just fall, he hid himself. He tucked himself away in a place so tight, so concealed, that he became part of the forest floor. This would explain why the dog left. The dog followed him for a while, confused by the strange behavior, until the cold or hunger drove the animal back to the last known point of safety, the car. And finally, we have to ask the question that makes everyone uncomfortable. Was he alone? Did someone else meet him in those woods? Ruttle Woods is remote. But remote places attract all kinds of people: poachers, wild campers, people who don't want to be seen. Was there an altercation? A robbery gone wrong? But the evidence fights back against this. The car was not stolen. The dog was not harmed. James was a beloved local man with no known enemies. There is no sign of a struggle, no blood near the car. Violence usually leaves a mess. This was clean. Too clean. The probability of foul play is low. But in a case with zero answers, even the impossible has to remain on the table. The hours turn into days. Christmas comes. Can you imagine that Christmas morning for the Paton family? The presents under the tree, the food in the oven, and the silence where a father, a grandfather, should be. The search teams eventually go home. The helicopters stop flying. The dive boats are pulled from the river. The woods go quiet again. But there is one image that sticks with me. It's not the muddy boots. It's not the dark river. It is the newspaper. That newspaper sitting on the seat of the Dacia Duster. James bought it at 1 p.m. He bought it to read the headlines, to check the sports results, to do the crossword puzzle. It is a promise of a future, a small, mundane promise that he would be there to read it. That newspaper never got read. It remains a time capsule, frozen in the afternoon of December 23, 2019. While the rest of the world moved on to 2020, to the pandemic, to the future, James Paton stayed in 2019. The seasons change. The bracken dies back in winter and grows tall in summer. The river Beauly rises and falls. And somewhere out there, the answer is waiting. The woods are not malicious, they are just indifferent. They keep their secrets well. But the family, they don't have the luxury of indifference. They are stuck in the not knowing. And that is a grief far heavier than death. Before we close this file, we have to look at one final thing. The detail that refuses to fit. The mud on the door. I want you to visualize it. James is gone. The woods are silent. The dog, loyal, confused, perhaps frightened, makes a choice. It doesn't run home. It doesn't run to the road. It runs to the car. The dog scrabbles up the side of the door. It squeezes through the open window. And then, it waits. It curls up on the seat and waits for a master who will never open that door again. This tells us something profound about the timeline. It tells us that whatever happened to James, it happened outside the immediate vicinity of the car, but close enough that the dog knew where to retreat. It tells us the end came quickly. If James had been calling for help for hours, the dog would likely have stayed by his side. The dog's return suggests a sudden silence, a sudden absence. So, I turn this over to you. You are the jury. You are the detectives. Look at the facts. A 72-year-old man, a winter afternoon, a treacherous forest, a fast river, and a dog that came back alone. Did the ground swallow him in a terrain trap? Did the river sweep him away into the deep currents? Or did his own mind betray him, leading him into the dark? Tell me in the comments. What is the most logical explanation for the muddy door? Sometimes the wisdom of the crowd sees what the experts miss. James Paton is still missing. There is no grave, no headstone, just a memory. In the world of true crime, we often look for villains. We look for the bad guy with the gun, the knife, the motive. But in the Highlands, the villain is not a person. The villain is nature itself. It is the indifference of the cold, the silence of the trees, the depth of the water. James Paton went for a walk on a Monday afternoon. He did what millions of us do every day. He parked his car. He walked his dog. He stepped into the margins of the map, and the map erased him. It is a terrifying reminder of how thin the line is between here and gone. One slip, one wrong turn, 1 second of distraction. Tonight, somewhere in Ruttle Woods, the wind is blowing through the branches. The river is rushing to the sea. The world keeps turning. But for the Paton family, the clock stopped at 1:30 p.m. on December 23, 2019. They are still waiting for the door to open. They are still waiting for him to come home and read that newspaper. But the woods aren't talking.